Money makes a very loud noise, but true betrayal is perfectly silent. Eleanor wore a beautiful red dress. She stood in the grand ballroom of a luxury hotel. People were drinking expensive champagne and laughing loudly. Tonight was the biggest night of her life. She had built Nexus from zero. It was a giant financial software company. Her husband, Richard, was the handsome face of the business. But Eleanor was the secret genius. She wrote every single line of the brilliant computer code in a dark room. Today, Nexus became a public company. It was officially worth $1 billion. Richard walked up to her with a warm, loving smile. He held a thick stack of legal papers. He looked like the perfect, supportive husband in front of the cameras. "Happy IPO day, my love," Richard whispered softly. "These are your special founders bonus papers. Sign here, and $50 million will go into your private account tomorrow." He handed her a shiny gold pen. Eleanor smiled with happy tears in her eyes. She trusted him with her entire soul. They had eaten cheap noodles together in a tiny garage 10 years ago. She took the gold pen and signed her name quickly. She did not read the complicated legal words. She just wanted to celebrate. A few hours later, Eleanor left the loud party early. She felt tired but incredibly happy. She called a luxury taxi to go back to their giant mansion. When the car arrived, she handed the driver her premium black credit card to pay. The driver swiped the card through his machine. It made a loud, angry beep. "I am sorry, ma'am," the driver said. "Your card is declined." Eleanor laughed slightly, thinking it was a simple bank error. She pulled out her mobile phone to check. She opened her private banking app. The loading screen circled for a few seconds. Then, the numbers appeared on the bright screen. Eleanor stopped breathing. Her heart felt like a heavy stone dropping into a deep ocean. The screen showed exactly $0. She quickly checked their joint savings account. It was totally empty. She checked her retirement fund. It was also completely empty. All the money they had saved for 10 years was gone. The numbers were all zero. Her hands began to shake violently. She called Richard's phone, but he did not answer. Suddenly, a cold realization hit her mind. She thought about the thick stack of papers she had signed at the party. She realized they were not stock bonus papers at all. It was a trap. She had signed a complex legal divorce agreement. She had blindly agreed to give Richard all her shares, all her money, and all her property. The gold pen had stolen her entire life. She was standing in the cold street with absolutely nothing. Eleanor ran back to the massive Nexus office building. The cold night wind hit her face. She pushed the heavy glass doors, but they did not open. She pressed her security badge against the digital lock. The red light flashed twice. Access denied. 2 large security guards walked toward her from the inside. They did not open the door. They looked at her with cold, empty eyes. Richard had already locked her out of the beautiful empire she had built with her own brain and sweat. She needed urgent legal help. Early the next morning, Eleanor ran to the office of Chloe. Chloe was the chief lawyer of Nexus. She was also Eleanor's close friend. Eleanor burst into the room, crying and shaking from the terrible, sleepless night. "Chloe, you have to help me," Eleanor begged loudly. "Richard stole everything. He made me sign fake divorce papers." Chloe was sitting calmly at her large wooden desk. She did not look surprised or worried. She slowly closed her expensive laptop and smiled. Chloe stood up and walked around the desk. She raised her left hand. A massive, shiny diamond ring was sparkling on her finger. Eleanor stared at the beautiful ring. Her stomach turned upside down. The terrible truth hit her like a heavy truck. Chloe was not her friend. She was Richard's secret lover. Chloe had used her brilliant legal mind to write the fake papers. She had carefully designed the perfect trap to destroy Eleanor. They had been planning this cruel betrayal for many long months. "You are very smart with computers, Eleanor," Chloe said with a cold, sharp voice. "But you are very stupid with people. Richard and I are getting married next month. We own Nexus now. You need to leave this city and never come back." Eleanor felt a burning anger in her chest. "You cannot just take my money and throw me away," she yelled. "I will fight you in court." Chloe laughed a dry, evil laugh. She picked up a thin gray folder from her neat desk. "You have no money to fight us," Chloe explained smoothly. "But that is not the worst part. Look at page 4 of the agreement you signed." She threw the folder onto the floor. Eleanor bent down slowly and picked up the legal document. Eleanor read the complex words carefully. Richard had not just taken her money. He had secretly collected all the failed investments and toxic debts of the company. He had legally transferred all that dirty debt into a new shell company. He put that terrible shell company entirely under Eleanor's name. The paper clearly showed she owed the bank $5 million. She was not just poor. She was buried alive in massive debt. Richard had given her a golden parachute made of heavy stones. Eleanor had to move into a cheap, dirty motel near the highway. The room smelled like old smoke and wet carpets. She sat on the hard bed, looking at a small cardboard box. It contained the only things Richard let her keep from the office. He had taken her expensive laptops, her hard drives, and all her digital notebooks. He wanted to make sure she could never write code or build software again. He thought he had destroyed her most powerful weapons. But Richard had made one fatal mistake. Deep inside the cardboard box, hidden under some old pens, was a small, brown leather book. It was a very old, physical Rolodex. Eleanor had used it 10 years ago when Nexus was just a tiny startup. She wiped the dust off the cover. Richard thought old paper was useless in a digital world. He did not know what was written inside. Eleanor opened the soft leather cover. The yellow pages contained the personal, private phone numbers of 10 extremely powerful CEOs. They were the first customers of Nexus. These 10 billionaires knew the deep, honest truth. They knew Richard was just a loud salesman with a nice smile. They knew Eleanor was the true, silent brain behind the magic software. They respected her brilliant mind more than any fancy presentation or speech. Eleanor took a deep breath. She used the motel's slow, free Wi-Fi and her cheap mobile phone. She dialed the private number of Marcus Vance, the richest client of Nexus. The phone rang 3 times before a deep, serious voice answered on the other end. "Mr. Vance, this is Eleanor," she said quietly. She expected him to ignore her. She thought he would hang up the phone because she was fired. She was ready to beg for a simple, low-paying job to survive and buy cheap food. But Marcus Vance did not hang up. Instead, he let out a loud, angry shout. "Eleanor, where are you?" he yelled. "Richard told me you were on a long vacation on a private island." Our main security system is completely broken right now. Eleanor felt a sudden spark of bright hope in her dark room. What do you mean? She asked carefully. The Nexus system is failing, Marcus explained angrily. Richard's new engineers cannot fix the deep code. They do not understand your brilliant architecture at all. Marcus sounded completely desperate. My company is losing millions of dollars today, he continued. Richard is a complete idiot. We need you, Eleanor. Can you fix the system? A slow, confident smile appeared on Eleanor's tired face. The ultimate opportunity for revenge had just arrived. Eleanor did not hesitate. I can fix your system, Mr. Vance, she said calmly into the phone. But I do not work for Nexus anymore. I have my own private company now. She looked around her dirty, cheap motel room. She called her new company Apex. She made a very smart deal with the billionaire. She offered to build a secret software patch to fix his broken system. She charged him a very low price. But she demanded one strict condition. He had to sign a total non-disclosure agreement. He must remain silent. Marcus Vance agreed immediately. He did not care about company politics. He just wanted his data to be safe. Eleanor opened her cheap, used laptop. She started typing fast. Her fingers danced over the keys like a famous musician playing a grand piano. She felt alive again. She did not build a completely new software program. That would take too many years. Instead, she built a ghost plugin. It was a secret piece of code that lived quietly inside the Nexus system. It fixed the broken errors from the inside without anyone seeing it. She sent the secret patch to Marcus. His systems were saved perfectly in 10 minutes. Marcus was incredibly happy. He immediately sent the good news to the other 9 powerful CEOs in the old leather book. They were all experiencing the same terrible problems with Richard. Within 1 week, Eleanor had 10 massive, secret clients. On the outside, these companies still looked like loyal Nexus customers. Richard thought his stupid engineers had finally fixed the errors. He had no idea that his ex-wife was actually saving his billion-dollar empire from the shadows. The secret money started flowing directly into Eleanor's new bank account. The numbers grew from 0 to hundreds of thousands of dollars very quickly. She finally had financial power again. But she did not buy a nice house or expensive clothes. She invested every single penny. Eleanor used the hidden money to hire a team of the best white-hat hackers in the world. They were brilliant, quiet programmers who loved a good fight. She rented a secure, underground office. The ghost startup was no longer just a dream in a motel room. She stood in front of her new secret team. The bright screens lit up their focused faces. Richard stole my past and my money, Eleanor told them clearly. But we are going to steal his future. We will build a weapon that Nexus can never stop. The quiet war had officially begun. They worked day and night in the dark room. Eleanor pushed her brilliant mind to the absolute limit. She knew exactly how the Nexus system was built because she was the original architect. She knew every single hidden door and every weak wall inside Richard's stolen castle. Richard and Chloe enjoyed their rich, easy life. They bought expensive sports cars and drank fine wine. But Chloe was a very careful lawyer. She started noticing strange financial reports. The 10 biggest clients were paying their normal bills, but their internal data traffic looked completely wrong. Chloe hired a private investigator to follow the digital footprints. The hidden trail led directly away from Nexus. It pointed straight to a new, unknown company called Apex. When Chloe discovered who owned Apex, she dropped her coffee cup on the floor. It was Eleanor. She ran to Richard's office and told him the terrible news. Richard's face turned bright red with wild anger. He could not believe the woman he threw in the garbage was fighting back. He decided to crush her like a small bug using his massive wealth and power. Richard filed a massive lawsuit against Eleanor. He accused her of stealing his intellectual property. He told the public that she was an angry, crazy ex-wife who had stolen the secret Nexus codes. He wanted the judge to throw her in a dark prison for 10 years. The news of the dramatic lawsuit spread quickly. The business world watched closely. The day of the legal hearing arrived. Richard walked into the courtroom wearing a $10,000 suit. Chloe walked beside him, smiling proudly. Eleanor walked in wearing a simple gray dress, looking totally calm. Richard's lawyers spoke loudly for an hour. They showed big charts and graphs. They claimed Eleanor's new software was just a cheap, illegal copy of the famous Nexus system. They demanded the judge shut down Apex immediately. Then it was Eleanor's turn to speak to the silent room. Eleanor did not bring a lawyer. She walked to the front and plugged her laptop into the large court screen. "I did not steal anything from Nexus," she said clearly. "I do not need to steal old garbage. I built something completely new and vastly superior." She pushed a button. A massive, complex wall of code appeared on the screen. She invited the court's expert computer scientists to examine it closely. The experts studied the bright screen for 30 long minutes in absolute silence. Richard began to sweat nervously in his expensive chair. Finally, the lead expert spoke. "This is not copied code," he told the shocked judge. "This is a brand new, brilliant algorithm. In fact, her code actively exposes massive, terrible security holes inside the Nexus software. Nexus is completely unsafe." Richard's false accusations were instantly destroyed. The judge hit his wooden hammer and dismissed the fake case immediately. Richard had tried to crush Eleanor in public, but he only proved that his own company was weak and broken. The world now knew that the true genius was sitting on the other side of the courtroom. Richard was losing control quickly. The public court disaster made his investors very angry. He needed a massive victory to save his failing reputation. He decided to launch a huge project. He confidently announced Global Update 2.0 for the entire Nexus network. He promised it would be perfect. He invited hundreds of famous reporters to a grand press conference. He stood on a brightly lit stage, smiling like a king. He promised that this new update would make Nexus the most secure software in human history. He was ready to prove Eleanor completely wrong. "Today, we change the world," Richard shouted proudly into the microphone. He dramatically pressed a large, shiny red button on the stage to start the global update. The reporters took hundreds of flashing photos. But the joyful celebration only lasted for exactly 10 seconds. Suddenly, the giant presentation screen behind him flashed a terrifying, bright red color. A loud warning alarm began to scream through the building's speakers. At that exact moment, the financial systems of massive corporations around the entire globe crashed simultaneously. All customer data was completely locked and frozen solid. Banks could not move money. Hospitals could not access patient records. The global network was experiencing a total, catastrophic meltdown. Richard stared at the red screen in pure, freezing horror. He had just destroyed his own billion-dollar empire in front of the entire world. The terrible truth was a masterpiece of silent revenge. Years ago, when Nexus was just a small startup, Eleanor had written a very special piece of secret code. It was called a poison pill. She designed it to completely destroy the system if hackers ever tried to steal it. She had hidden this dangerous, self-destructing algorithm deep inside an old, forgotten hard drive. When Eleanor left, Richard ordered his cheap engineers to search all her old files. They were looking for any brilliant code they could use to make Nexus run faster and save money. Because Richard and his new team were not true experts, they found the poison pill and completely misunderstood it. They thought the complex, powerful algorithm was a hidden optimization tool. They thought they had found Eleanor's ultimate secret weapon for speed and efficiency. They proudly copied the deadly code and placed it directly into the heart of Global Update 2.0. Richard had literally stolen a digital bomb. He had proudly pushed the button to blow up his own castle. The greedy thief had willingly swallowed his own deadly poison. Eleanor sat quietly in her dark underground office, watching the news on a small screen. She sipped a cup of hot coffee. She did not hack his system. She did not attack his network. She just let his own blind arrogance and greed do all the destructive work perfectly. The stock market reacted with brutal speed. Within 24 hours, the value of Nexus stock dropped by an unbelievable 80%. The billion-dollar company became almost worthless overnight. Angry investors and powerful CEOs threatened to sue Richard in federal court. He was facing a lifetime in dark prison. Richard locked himself inside the executive panic room of his giant office. He sweated heavily, yelling at his best engineers through the phone. "Fix it right now," he screamed. "Unlock the data immediately." But the terrified engineers had to deliver the worst possible news to their angry boss. "We cannot stop the poison pill, sir," the lead engineer cried. "The destruction code is secured by a dynamic biometric encryption." Richard did not understand the complex words. He demanded a simple explanation. The truth made his blood run completely cold in his freezing veins. Eleanor had not used a normal password for the deadly algorithm. The code could only be unlocked by the exact, unique rhythm of her own fingers typing on a keyboard. It was a digital lock tied to her physical soul. Nobody in the world could copy it. Richard realized he was totally powerless. He needed the woman he had cruelly thrown into the street to save his life. While Richard was having a mental breakdown in the panic room, his beautiful fiancée was making her own smart, cold calculations. Chloe watched the stock numbers fall rapidly. Chloe was a survivor. She saw that the giant ship was sinking fast to the bottom of the ocean. She did not love Richard. She only loved his shiny money. She quietly opened her private laptop and logged into all their shared international bank accounts. She did not hesitate for a single second. Chloe sold all her remaining Nexus shares secretly. Then, she transferred every single dollar of Richard's remaining cash into an untraceable offshore account in a different country. She packed a small bag with expensive diamonds and left the beautiful mansion. A few hours later, Richard ran out of the panic room. He desperately needed to talk to Chloe to find a legal escape. He called her phone, but the number was completely disconnected. He checked his bank accounts to buy a plane ticket and escape the angry police. The screen showed exactly $0. Richard fell to his knees in the empty, silent office. Karma had delivered a perfect, painful circle. Chloe had done to him exactly what they had done to Eleanor. The fake billionaire was now completely alone, broken, and buried in massive, toxic debt. He stared at the glowing zeros on his computer screen. The heavy silence in the room felt like a physical weight on his chest. He had stolen an empire, but he had lost his soul. Now, the cruel universe was handing him the exact same empty plate he served his wife. While Richard was crying on his office floor, Eleanor stepped into the bright light. The global business world was in total chaos. Powerful companies were screaming for a miracle to save their frozen data. Eleanor decided it was the perfect time to officially introduce Apex to the desperate public. She hosted a massive, live online presentation from her underground office. Millions of people watched her calm, confident face. She did not look angry or bitter. She looked like a brilliant queen ready to save her kingdom. She announced her brand new software platform to the anxious world. I know your data is currently trapped inside a broken system, Eleanor spoke clearly into the camera. But Apex has a solution. She revealed a revolutionary new feature called one-touch migration. It was a powerful tool designed specifically to extract and rescue frozen data from the dying Nexus network. The business leaders watching the screen could not believe their eyes. Eleanor demonstrated the tool live. With a single click, the Apex software safely pulled a massive block of trapped information out of the Nexus trap. It cleaned the data perfectly and secured it inside the new Apex cloud. It was pure technological magic. The desperate companies were ready to pay billions of dollars for this lifesaver. They expected Eleanor to demand a massive fortune during this terrible crisis. They thought she would act like a greedy pirate. But Eleanor was playing a much deeper, smarter game. I built the original system, and I deeply apologize for its failure under new management, Eleanor announced smoothly. Therefore, I will not charge you for this rescue. The entire business world gasped in shock. She was offering the ultimate solution for absolutely nothing. Any company that leaves Nexus today will receive the Apex platform completely free for one entire year, Eleanor declared. It was a brilliant, devastating business move. She was not just rescuing the trapped clients, she was completely destroying the final pieces of Richard's dying empire. Within 60 seconds of her announcement, thousands of companies began canceling their Nexus contracts simultaneously. The phone lines at Nexus went completely dead. Nobody wanted to stay on a sinking ship when a free, luxury rescue boat was waiting for them. The migration was massive and unstoppable. Eleanor's strategy was flawless. By offering the service for free, she built unbreakable trust and loyalty with the most powerful corporations on Earth. She instantly acquired all of her old clients back, plus hundreds of new ones. She had cut off the last breath of air to Richard's lungs. She closed her laptop and smiled at her cheering team of hackers. They had won the war without firing a single physical bullet. Apex was now the undisputed king of the software world. The ghost startup had stepped out of the shadows to rule the bright, digital sky. The board of directors at Nexus held an emergency meeting. The old, rich men in dark suits were terrified. Their billion-dollar company was now worth pennies. They immediately fired Richard, kicking him out of the company in deep disgrace. But firing the idiot did not save their sinking ship. They needed a miracle. They desperately needed the true genius to return. The board members called Eleanor's phone, begging her to come back. They offered her the official title of Chief Executive Officer and a massive salary. They thought money could fix the terrible bridges they had burned. Eleanor agreed to meet them. She walked into the Grand Nexus boardroom for the first time in a year. She wore a sharp, powerful black suit. The terrified board members stood up quickly, smiling nervously and offering her coffee. Eleanor did not sit down. She looked at them coldly. "Thank you for the CEO offer," Eleanor said, her voice echoing in the large, silent room. "But I must decline. I have absolutely no interest in becoming an employee of this failing company." The board members gasped, their faces turning pale. They begged her to reconsider, offering more money. Eleanor raised her hand to silence the loud room. "I do not want a job," she stated clearly. "I am here to execute a hostile takeover." The old men looked at each other in total confusion. Nexus was failing, but they still owned the massive, expensive physical hardware servers. Eleanor opened her elegant black briefcase. She pulled out a thick stack of legal documents and threw them onto the shiny wooden table. "When Richard kicked me out, he forced me to take $5 million in toxic, bad debt," she explained slowly. "It was meant to destroy me." She pointed a sharp finger at the papers. "But I used the massive profits from Apex to secretly buy back all the other bad debts of this company from the angry banks." The board members began to sweat. They finally realized the terrible trap they were standing inside. Eleanor now owned all the financial debt of Nexus. She was their biggest, most powerful creditor. "You owe me $50 million, she declared with a cold smile. "Because you cannot pay me in cash, I am legally seizing all your physical assets. I own your servers now." The board members were completely paralyzed. Eleanor had used their own dirty garbage to build a financial weapon. She had legally stolen the entire castle right from under their feet. They had no power, no money, and no choices left. The brilliant queen had checkmated the entire greedy board. She picked up her black briefcase and turned towards the heavy glass doors. "You have exactly 1 hour to pack your personal belongings and leave my building," Eleanor commanded smoothly. She walked out of the room, leaving the powerful men sitting in complete, ruined silence. The empire was hers again. Richard sat alone in a dark, cheap bar. He smelled like cheap alcohol and deep despair. He was completely bankrupt. The federal police were preparing to arrest him for massive investor fraud and destroying global network security. He was facing 30 years in a cold, lonely prison cell. He had no friends, no lovers, and absolutely no hope. Suddenly, the door of the dark bar opened. Eleanor walked in, looking powerful and perfectly calm. She sat down at his dirty table. Richard looked at her with red, crying eyes. He looked like a broken, pathetic shadow. "Have you come to laugh at me?" Richard whispered weakly. Eleanor shook her head slowly. "I came to offer you a final business deal," she said with a flat, emotionless voice. Richard sat up slightly, a tiny spark of desperate hope appearing in his tired, sad eyes. Eleanor pulled a single piece of paper from her coat. "I am buying your final, worthless shares of Nexus," she explained. "In return, my lawyers will provide you with personal legal immunity. You will not go to prison for the global crash. You will walk away a free man. Richard could not believe his luck. He began to cry loudly, thanking her again and again. You are an angel, Eleanor. Thank you. How much are you paying for the shares? He asked eagerly. He hoped for $1 million to start a new, comfortable life far away. Eleanor reached into her pocket and placed an object on the sticky table. It was a wrinkled, dirty $1 bill. $1, she said coldly. That is exactly what your fake genius and your cruel lies are worth to me. Take it, or go to federal prison tomorrow. Richard stared at the sad, green paper. He felt a deep, crushing humiliation in his soul. He was a billionaire yesterday, and now he was begging for a single dollar. But he had absolutely no choice. He was trapped in a dark corner. He nodded his head slowly. Eleanor pushed the legal contract toward him. Then, she placed a familiar object on top of the paper. It was a shiny gold pen. It was the exact same pen Richard had given her to sign the fake divorce papers. The universe had a very sharp sense of humor. Richard's hands shook violently as he picked up the golden pen. He signed his name on the line, officially giving away his entire stolen empire for a single coin. He dropped the pen on the table and covered his face with his dirty hands, sobbing in total defeat. Eleanor stood up gracefully. She did not feel angry anymore. She felt completely free. She left the wrinkled dollar bill on the table and walked out into the bright, warm city sunlight. She had lost her money once, but she had used her brilliant mind to win the entire world.